Diets don't work. And you're probably thinking, yeah, Elena, I know you've told us this 1,000 times. Why are you telling us this again? And because today I want to talk about, if we know that diets don't work, why do we keep falling for them? Why do we keep going towards diets that we know are not going to be successful? So I'm going to talk about a little bit of research that's cited in the book Secrets from the Eating Lab by Traci Mann to kind of demonstrate what I think the answer to this question is. Now, one thing that we have to start off by talking about is, how is work defined? Meaning, if a diet works, what does work mean, right? And so I think that's part of the issue, is that can be defined in a lot of different ways. So for example, the owner of this diet company or diet product or whatever it might be probably defines work as, if someone lost any amount of weight over any period of time. Whereas a researcher, for example, might define it as work if the person on the diet lost more weight than a person not on a diet. But those two things leave a lot out. It leaves out, did that person lose the weight that they were trying to? Were they able to maintain that weight loss? What happened, right? And that's the kind of stuff that oftentimes isn't presented to us in the media. We just see the quick before and after picture, and maybe it's 6 months or something, and we're like, wow, let's do it. But we don't think about what could happen long term or what that person's goal was, and we don't know the inner workings of that diet and how it worked for that particular individual. So again, looking into some research that is cited in Traci Mann's book, Secrets from the Eating Lab, there's one study that she does that talks about, or that's cited in this book, that talks about how we know that diets don't work long term. And in this particular study, there was individuals who were classified as obese that willingly admitted themselves into the hospital to be starved. And over that time period, of course, they lost weight, but the goal of this study was actually to determine the long-term effects. And what they found is, just want to make sure I get the statistic right, that among those who were followed for less than 2 years, 23% of them gained back more weight than they lost during the, we'll call it, starvation study, right? And then for those who were followed for more than 2 years, 83% gained back more weight than they lost. And that's interesting, right? Because that's not the kind of stuff that's going to be presented to you in the media. It's very rare that you see someone talking about the diet that they started and then where they are 4 or 5 years later, right? You always see the day one and then the 8 months later, or the very short term. So that seems very appealing. Now, kind of touching on what I said a minute ago about these person's goals, is a lot of times we don't know what their goal was. Or maybe, yeah, to you in that picture it looks better, but maybe that person isn't happy, which kind of leads to a cycle of self-shame that leads to wanting to do more and more and more diets. So another research study cited in this same book, right, surveyed 60 women who were classified as obese before doing a diet, and then they were surveyed again after doing the diet, right? And part of what they were surveyed on is what their goal weight was, right? So they were asked to write down what their goal weight was, meaning like before starting this diet, what weight do they want to get to? And then they were also asked to write down what their dream weight would be. So maybe that was more than their goal weight or lower, whatever it might be, but it was a different weight than their goal weight. It would be like, if I, in a dream world, I would be this weight. They were also asked to write down their acceptable weight, meaning, and how they defined it is they would accept it, but they wouldn't necessarily be happy with that result. And then they were asked to write down their disappointed weight, and how that was defined is they would not view it as successful in any way, even if it was less than their starting weight. So goal weight, dream weight, acceptable weight, and disappointed weight. So this is what they were asked, before they started the diet. And then a year later, they were followed up with. And a year later, none of them achieved their dream weight. None. 9% achieved their goal weight. 24% achieved their acceptable weight. And remember, that means that they would accept it, but they wouldn't necessarily be happy with it. 20% achieved their disappointed weight. And remember, that was the one that said they wouldn't view that as successful in any way, even though it was less than where they started, which means 47% lost some weight, but didn't even get to what they would consider their disappointed weight. So they lost some, but didn't even get to what they would have originally been unhappy with. Does that make sense? And so the reason I'm pointing out this study is because that just goes to show 47% of those people, and if not including the other 20% that did the disappointed weight and the 24% that achieved their acceptable weight, are probably going to try another diet. They're going to see something else in the media that shows X, Y, and Z, and they're going to be like, okay, I'm going to try this one. So why would they do it again? Because one, they didn't even get to their disappointed weight, and two, what ends up happening for those individuals who didn't meet their disappointed weight is they blame themselves. They tell themselves, oh, well, you know, I did allow myself that 1 or 2 cheat days, or there was a couple days where I didn't follow it perfectly. And it leads to this idea of blaming yourself for failing the diet, when really it's the fault of the diet not being set up for success. So, as I'm gonna leave it today is, I know we're heading into a time where a lot of people want to start diets in the new year, or start diets because of who knows, whatever's been going on, but this is a very popular time, and I want to encourage you to not start that diet. Remember that any sort of sustainable, meaning long-term, fat loss is going to take a long time. Don't fall for the fads.